Hello and welcome to the Frans van Kath interview. I'm Annette Young. It has all the elements of an airport thriller. Working under top secrecy, an international team of doctors converted a suburban villa into a field hospital in northern Syria. But in recent days, Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders as they are known in English, have actually blown their cover. The reason being is that they have appealed for help because the situation in this conflict-torn country has become so critical. Joining me in the studio is Danish surgeon Catherine Holt, who's just returned from working in that clinic in Syria. Catherine Holt, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
First of all, what made you decide to accept that mission and head out to Syria?
Basically, I chose to sign up with Doctors Without Borders about a year ago because I had the message that there was a huge need for surgeons to perform surgeries and to treat patients all over the world. So when I was offered to do this mission, I didn't hesitate. I had had reports that there was immense needs for medical help, and I really didn't hesitate to go.
But didn't it worry you? Because clearly we're not talking about going into a conventional situation. You're going into what is close to, or these days recognised as a civil war.
Well, yes and no. First of all, I didn't hesitate really when I was offered the mission. That also has to do with the fact that I've worked with Doctors Without Borders for a year, and I have confidence in the management of security. Secondly, from the moment I came into Syria and until the moment I left, I was completely absorbed in work. We treated the patients. We'll discuss that later. 24 hours a day. There was really no time to reflect on these issues. So basically it's only after you come out of the zone, you have the time to relax a bit and reflect on what really was going on in there.
Now I understand the government was aware that Doctors Without Borders was in the country, but they certainly weren't aware that they were staying put and in fact had established this clinic, right?
Well, before the setup of the clinic, we informed the authorities that we were going to be there and that we would work there. They replied politely that we were there without permission, and they politely asked us to leave, and we didn't hear anything from the authorities.
Were you harassed at all as you went in? I mean, was any of you ever threatened, any of the foreign medical staff ever threatened by government officials as such?
No. Not at all. And let me say that we, in this particular mission, hospital, we worked in close collaboration with a group of Syrian doctors who helped us as well with formalities and.
And you had about 50 or so local staff. I mean,
yes.
Were their lives at risk by the fact that they were working with you guys?
I'm probably not the right one to answer to that question, but I can tell you that during my 4 weeks in Syria, almost every day we had staff members coming to work at the hospital who had lost close friends or family members, either during direct bombing of the houses or by simply getting caught in crossfire. So they were definitely close to the centers of combat.
Just tell me, what does it take to convert a suburban home, a suburban villa, into a field hospital?
It takes an incredible amount of patience and hard work, mainly from the people that you don't see here on television. That is the people that work with Doctors Without Borders in order to secure our supplies.
These are local people, basically.
Local people and international staff as well. They made it possible for me, just to give you an example, that I arrived in Syria, and immediately 2 hours after my arrival, I was able to go into the operating room to do surgery on a man who had 10 holes in his bowel, and we did a successful surgery, and this patient, this man, recovered completely. But obviously, it's a huge challenge. We were operating this mission in a entirely normal Syrian villa that was empty because the owner of the villa was out of the country. So first of all, we had to think about how to arrange this villa into a hospital.
And how did you do that? What did you do?
Well, obviously, We thought about the flow of sort of the patients, so to speak, without becoming too technical. What we basically did was we first of all made an emergency room, sort of an emergency area,
a reception area,
which was on the terrace just outside the villa, where we initially assessed the patients that came into the hospital. In the ground floor, this was a villa with three, floors: a ground floor, first floor, and a terrace. So on the ground floor, we constructed an operating theater, a room where we actually do the surgery, a room which we call the resuscitation room, which is the room where the patients go, the seriously injured, before they actually have surgery. Then we had a room where people wait after surgery, and then we have the rooms,
the wards.
Very important, yes, but also the rooms for sterilization and cleaning the equipment. First floor was the wards where the patients stayed. It was a small hospital, let me say that, with 12 beds on the first floor, which is where I lived also. My sort of bed was on the terrace, and then we had 12 patient beds inside the house.
And what was it like for you? I mean, were you working incredibly long hours, I imagine? I mean, you were basically on call. I mean, when were patients arriving? Did it tend to be during the day or at night, or?
Let me say that in this context, there's absolutely no distinction between working life and private life. You are in work. You work from the moment you arrive until the moment you leave. Yes, you're basically always on call, and because we are very few people, we have to do other sort of tasks than the ones we would normally do.
And when were people arriving? Was it during the day or at night?
They arrived at all hours. A lot of time. Often they arrived in the evening and in the night. Typically, I would be on the terrace, and I would hear the cars arriving with the patients. Either they would shoot in the air to mark that they have arrived, or they would use the horn. Then I would run to look into the street from the terrace to see if there were patients in the cars or not. If they were bringing patients, I would go downstairs, grab an interpreter, because people obviously speak Arabic and I don't. So grab an interpreter, go outside of the hospital house and into the cars to actually do the initial assessment.
You would do it inside the car?
Yeah. This is the only practical way to do it, because if 5 or 6 patients arrive at the same time, you have to make the distinction about the types of injury. Is it a seriously injured patient? Can this patient perhaps wait a couple of hours? If so, we will have to ask him to wait at the terrace. Does he have to go immediately into the operating room? And this I would do together with some colleagues.
So given that this was in a secret location, how did you manage to get word out that you had established a field hospital, and how far afield were people coming?
Actually, we didn't do anything to sort of actively to get the word out. I don't think that was necessary. The word was spread amongst the people. There is such an immense need of medical care in this part of Syria. I'm only saying this part because this is what I personally know about. I don't know about the other parts. That people travel for 1 to 2 days to get to our hospital.
And they were coming under shelling and firing themselves as they were trying to get into the...
We had several patients that told me that they had been shelled trying to arrive. And let me just say that even if they traveled for days, maybe 1 or 2 days, they didn't necessarily come from far away. Some of the injuries happened maybe only 10 or 20 kilometers away, but even then they would have to go via some back roads and back channels to be able to come to us. And this was in fact the most frustrating thing about this project, was that often, or at least every other day, I would see patients arriving to our hospital in such a terrible condition that we were not able to save them. And I know that if they had been able to come to us maybe 4 to 5 hours earlier, it would have been possible to save their lives.
And what sort of injuries were you seeing? Were they, I assume, primarily war-related injuries?
90% was war-related, and even the 10% that weren't, they were patients in need of general surgical procedures that they could not have done because the hospitals that would normally treat them had been closed due to the conflict.
And the town or the village where this hospital is located, is it coming under fire itself? Were you hearing shelling as you were operating?
We weren't under fire ourselves, but the shelling we heard almost every night.
And in terms of electrical supply, was that interrupted on a regular basis?
It was almost in a constant state of interruption, you may say, which was another huge challenge because not only was it interrupted, but the general quality of city power, not only for us, but for the entire city, was so low that we could not run normal electrical equipment. Oxygen, for example, was a huge problem. So we needed to have special generators brought in to basically make electricity.
But it must have been incredibly difficult as a surgeon. You didn't know whether in fact you were going to have enough power during a crucial operation.
Actually, several times we would have to start the surgery wearing headlamps and torches in order to be able to prevent these sudden power cuts. I mean, obviously when you have people coming in bleeding and you need to stop the bleeding, obviously you need to see where you operate. So often we would just have this extra sets ready.
Catherine, finally and very briefly, the situation obviously there in Syria is critical. I mean, people are in dire need of medical services. Is the organisation wanting to set up other field hospitals across the country?
We are trying. We have been following the situation in Syria from the beginning of the conflict, and we have been trying and making so-called explorations where we send in a small team visiting the various areas, trying to assess the need, and this is ongoing. I've heard that we are planning on opening other hospitals in Syria.
Dr. Catherine Holt, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for being with us. And that's it for this edition of the Frans van Katr interview. Stay tuned for more news and headlines, which are coming up very shortly.